Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the most critical topics of our time, not just to inform you, but really to help you connect the dots and truly understand the forces shaping our world. Today, we're tackling a profound paradox, one that I think touches almost every one of our lives: the relentless, often exhausting pace of modern professional existence. We are, by all accounts, more connected, more always on, and seemingly more productive than ever before. Yet, beneath this veneer of efficiency, a very different and frankly far more troubling story is unfolding. Many of us feel increasingly stretched, fatigued, and, well, profoundly disengaged. It's this strange contradiction. The more we strive for productivity, the more our well being seems to suffer. It creates this kind of vicious cycle that's just so hard to break.
It's a critical observation, and you're absolutely right. This isn't just a subjective feeling anymore. It's become a systemic issue, deeply rooted in the very fabric of how we work now. Unprecedented global events have layered on new stressors. The relentless hum of what we've come to call hustle culture keeps pushing us, and then the unique challenges presented by remote work have fundamentally reshaped our professional lives. For so many, the lines between work and personal life have blurred almost to an unrecognizable degree, leading to this pervasive sense of being perpetually on call.
That blurring of line, yeah, that's something so many of us can relate to, I think. So for this deep dive, we're really digging into the critical landscape of workplace well-being, burnout, and what sustainable productivity actually looks like. We've pulled together some fascinating sources for this exploration, everything from practical guides on how to combat burnout to comprehensive, data-driven reports that offer a pretty stark reality check, and even some really intriguing cultural insights into, believe it or not, the lost art of doing nothing, which might sound counterintuitive, but is surprisingly powerful.
Right, and our mission for you in this deep dive is precisely that. To extract the most important insights, give you those genuine aha moments that connect the dots between these seemingly disparate observations. We want to provide you with a clearer, more nuanced understanding of what's truly happening in the modern workplace. But we won't stop there. More importantly, we'll explore actionable strategies, both personal ones you could maybe start implementing today, and broader organizational changes that can help us all move towards a more sustainable, healthier, and ultimately a more fulfilling way of working. It's really about building a future of work that actually works for us, not against us.
Okay, so let's jump right in. We have to start with the alarming state of workplace well-being because the narrative isn't just anecdotal anymore. The data paints a very clear and somewhat grim picture. What's the scale of this problem looking like?
Well, the scope is, frankly, far more pervasive than many might realize. A recent study by Indeed revealed a striking statistic. Over half of all respondents encountered burnout.
Over half.
Over half. Now, let's just pause on that for a second. Over 50% of the working population experiencing burnout. The true aha here isn't just the number, though that's huge. It's realizing that burnout isn't necessarily a sign of individual weakness or some personal failure to cope. It actually acts more like a systemic alarm bell, indicating that our very systems of work, the demands, the expectations, the structures are fundamentally unsustainable for human flourishing in the long term. It's less about can you handle it, and maybe more about is this system designed for people to thrive.
Over half. That's staggering. And one of the most talked about ways the systemic burnout is manifesting is this phenomenon people are calling quiet quitting.
Yeah.
It sounds like people are just checking out entirely, maybe being lazy, but it's much more nuanced than that, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's a really crucial distinction. Quiet quitting, as explored by sources like Monotask, describes this subtle but significant disengagement, where employees deliberately do only the bare minimum required to keep their jobs. They withdraw from extra responsibilities, stop volunteering for new projects, maybe refrain from going that extra mile they used to. What's truly fascinating and often misunderstood here is that it's not necessarily about active dissatisfaction or even wanting to leave the company. Not always, anyway. Instead, it's often a protective mechanism, a form of self-preservation, really, against feeling perpetually overworked, undervalued, or just completely overwhelmed by demands that feel limitless.
Right, so it's like putting up a shield.
Exactly. Imagine an employee who once eagerly contributed ideas in meetings or, stayed late without being asked to finish a presentation. Quiet quitting might mean they still complete their core tasks, maybe perfectly, but they'll no longer offer input in meetings unless directly asked. Or they'll log off precisely at 5 p.m., even if a task isn't perfectly polished. Their commitment hasn't vanished entirely, but it has certainly decreased, maybe significantly, as a way of defending their personal boundaries and their mental energy.
That makes so much sense. It's a defense mechanism, a quiet pushback against a system that feels unsustainable, almost like a silent scream for balance. And it ties directly into this broader hustle culture phenomenon that Forbes highlights. We're just constantly bombarded with these messages to grind harder, optimize every minute, always be closing, but at what profound cost to ourselves?
Exactly. Forbes points out how this relentless, often uncritical pursuit of goals, typically at the expense of personal well-being, can actually be profoundly counterproductive. It can lead to diminishing returns in terms of both output and, crucially, individual health. There was this insightful TEDx talk by Meg Miller, Detoxing Off the Drug of Achievement. She shared her own story very powerfully. She talked about subsisting on string cheese and protein bars for like 15 years, driven by this deeply ingrained belief that equating busyness with success was the path to fulfillment.
Wow, 15 years.
Yeah. And what she found, unsurprisingly perhaps, was profound physical and emotional depletion. It's a perfect example of how this kind of hustle can become almost a coping mechanism, maybe masking deeper insecurities or fears of inadequacy, and it just traps individuals in this unsustainable and ultimately unfulfilling cycle.
It's like we've been conditioned to believe that if you're not visibly busy, you're not successful. And if you're not on 24/7, you're somehow falling behind. It's just an exhausting mindset, and it speaks to a deep cultural narrative we've absorbed, I think. Now, let's move from these behavioral manifestations to some hard data that really underscores the collective health picture in the modern workforce. Specifically from the Champion Health Report 2024. This isn't just about individual experiences anymore. This is about broad, measurable trends.
Yeah, this report gives a really comprehensive data-driven view. It synthesized insights from over 4,300 employees and, get this, over 1 million data points. So it offers a pretty robust snapshot of current workplace well-being. And the mental health picture, sadly, is indeed worsening. The prevalence of anxiety symptoms increased by 8% and depression symptoms by 11% just since last year's report.
Just in 1 year.
Just in 1 year. To put that in perspective, nearly 2 out of 3 people in this survey are experiencing at least mild symptoms of anxiety and depression. This isn't a fringe issue anymore. It's a mainstream reality for the majority of the workforce.
That's a huge jump. Really highlights a rapid deterioration. But there's a crucial silver lining within that data, isn't there? The report also highlights some progress, showing the impact of intervention when it happens.
Yes, exactly. And this is where the hope lies. Despite the overall increase in symptoms, data from users of the Champion platform itself, people who access support, showed a significant decrease in clinically relevant symptoms. For anxiety, it was a notable 16% decrease. And for depression, an even more impressive 23% decrease. And this was after just 1 month of using the platform.
Wow, just 1 month.
Just 1 month. This isn't just a minor improvement. It dramatically underscores the critical importance of early intervention and accessible support services. It unequivocally shows that when support is readily available and people actually use it, it can make a tangible, rapid, and really meaningful difference in people's mental health trajectories.
That's incredibly encouraging. It really highlights the power of proactivity, doesn't it? And speaking of progress, it raises an important question about who is actually accessing this support. I know there's traditionally been a significant stigma around mental health, particularly maybe for men. Are we seeing any shifts there?
Well, what's truly fascinating here is that a greater proportion of men are indeed seeking mental health support. The report shows a significant 24% increase since last year.
24% increase for men seeking help.
Yeah. This is a very positive and encouraging sign. It suggests that the conversation around mental health is empowering more individuals, including men, to reach out when they need to, challenging those long-held societal norms around, emotional expression. It suggests that efforts to destigmatize mental health discussions are having a real, measurable impact.
That's great news.
It is. However, we also have to acknowledge that women are still more likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression. 62% of those with clinically relevant anxiety symptoms were women, and 61% of people experiencing unhelpful stress were women, compared to just 37% of men. So this highlights persistent gender disparities. It's possibly due to a confluence of factors, right? ongoing gender inequality in pay and progression, perhaps, and often greater family and caring responsibilities that place a disproportionate burden.
So we're seeing positive movement in who's seeking help, which is vital, but the underlying issues for certain demographics, particularly women, remain significant and definitely require targeted attention. Now, there's a truly disturbing trend that the Champion Health Report highlights, one that requires us to maybe lean into an uncomfortable truth.
Yes, this raises a deeply important, albeit difficult point that we really cannot shy away from. The report presents the stark reality that thoughts of self-harm or suicide are more prevalent this year. They increased by 44% to affect 13% of employees.
13%, 1-3.
13%. That's a significant portion of the workforce dealing with such immense internal struggle. It's not just a number on a page. It's a profound human crisis unfolding in our workplaces, demanding immediate attention, profound empathy, and comprehensive support strategies from organizations. It really compels us to acknowledge the very foundations of how we operate and whether they are genuinely fostering well-being.
13%. That's a statistic that should give every leader, every manager, and frankly, every colleague pause. It truly drives home the urgency of fostering supportive environments. And the report also dives into which demographics are feeling the most pressure, pinpointing specific groups that seem to be under siege.
Indeed. Young people, specifically the 16 to 24 age group, consistently fare the worst across mental health, stress, and financial well-being metrics. They scored only 21 on the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Well-Being Scale. Now, this scale ranges from 14, which is the lowest possible well-being, up to 70, the highest.
And they scored 21.
21. It's a stark indicator, placing this demographic far below the average and highlighting really profound challenges in their overall emotional and psychological state. When we connect this to the bigger picture, it suggests a generation navigating an exceptionally complex landscape. Significant life changes as they enter adulthood, constant exposure to curated and often unrealistic versions of life on social media.
Yeah, the comparison trap.
Totally.
Yeah.
Plus, immense parental expectations sometimes, and an acute fear of unemployment in a turbulent economic climate. This combination creates a kind of perfect storm of vulnerability. It emphasizes the urgent need for a proactive employer and maybe pastoral care tailored specifically for this demographic.
It's certainly a challenging and often overwhelming time to be young and entering the workforce. Beyond mental health, though, the Champion Health Report also highlights the pervasive impact of physical health issues on productivity. It's all interconnected, isn't it? Our bodies and minds aren't separate entities at all.
Absolutely not. One major area of concern is musculoskeletal pain, or MSK pain. The report found that a staggering 43% of employees report experiencing MSK pain.
Almost half.
Almost half. And of those, 84% rated as moderate or severe. Nearly 1 in 2 say it actively impacts their productivity. What's particularly interesting, and a point often missed, is the disproportionate impact on hybrid workers. 37% of them report it, and manual workers, where nearly 1 in 2 experience MSK pain.
Hybrid workers, too. Why is that?
Well, for hybrid workers, it often stems from inadequate home office setups.
Right.
You're working from a kitchen table or a couch. It's just not designed for 8 hours of focused work. This points to a critical need for ergonomic education, maybe even subsidies for proper home equipment from employers.
Good point.
And for manual workers, of course, it's a direct consequence of physical exertion, emphasizing the need for proper training, maybe rotation schedules, and regular rest. Also, women are significantly more affected, accounting for 64% of those with current pain versus 35% of men.
64%. Why the big difference?
This could be linked to major life events like pregnancy and menopause, which impact hormone levels and structural changes. Things like reduced bone density, maybe muscle mass changes. It just makes proactive support for female health even more crucial in this area too.
So working from home or in hybrid models or in physically demanding jobs, it isn't necessarily a panacea if ergonomic support and understanding of gender-specific health challenges aren't deeply embedded in organizational policy.
Precisely. The report also notes that 40% of people reported at least one long-term health condition.
40%.
40%. And 67% of those with chronic pain say it impacts their productivity. Chronic pain, defined as pain lasting more than 3 months, is often debilitating and hard to pinpoint to a single cause. It can encompass a range of conditions from fibromyalgia to back issues. Its insidious nature means it can profoundly disrupt concentration, mood, physical capacity, making comprehensive empathetic support absolutely crucial. Ignoring it just isn't an option for a productive workforce.
And it's not just the big, obvious conditions either. Even something as seemingly minor as eye health is having a major impact, linking directly back to our hyper-digital lives.
Yes, it's a subtle but incredibly pervasive issue.
Right.
Nearly two-thirds of people face eye strain symptoms.
Two-thirds.
Yeah, and 37% experience headaches or migraines during the workday, with almost half of them, 47%, reporting it impacts their productivity. This is directly linked to constant screen exposure and reduced blink reflexes. Our eyes are simply not designed for the continuous, unwavering focus demanded by digital screens day in, day out. The constant strain on eye muscles, coupled with maybe a less stable tear film, leads to dryness, irritation, and impacts vision quality.
So what can we do? Just stop looking at screens?
Well, not entirely practical for most. But while the obvious answer might be to reduce screen time, even short, regular breaks away from the screen can help massively, like looking at distant objects for just a minute or two every 20 minutes or so. You might have heard of the 20-20-20 rule. Look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds every 20 minutes. Even simple things like that can significantly alleviate symptoms and protect long-term eye health. It's a small change with potentially a large impact.
Okay, it's clear that our physical and mental well-being are under immense, multifaceted pressure in the modern work environment. This brings us to another critical aspect, the remote work paradox. While offering undeniable flexibility and convenience, the rapid shift to telework, obviously accelerated by the pandemic, has also taken a unique psychological toll. Over 50% of the global workforce now works remotely, at least part-time. That's a huge shift.
It is. And the Academic and International Journal of Multidisciplinary Research conducted a study on 50 remote workers that illuminates this paradox really well. Their findings reveal key correlations between telework characteristics and mental health outcomes, painting a pretty nuanced picture of this new work reality. For instance, a striking 62% of participants reported increased anxiety. And this was strongly correlated with social isolation, which was reported by 80% of all participants.
80% felt socially isolated.
80%. The absence of spontaneous, informal, face-to-face interactions, those water cooler chats, the quick check-ins, bumping into someone in the hallway, clearly leads to profound feelings of loneliness and disconnection for many. It really impacts their sense of belonging and psychological safety.
That social isolation piece is so crucial. Many people really thrive on those casual office interactions, and trying to replace them with scheduled video calls, it just isn't the same, is it?
It really isn't. And it doesn't stop there. 48% of participants reported symptoms of depression. And this was directly linked to poor work-life balance, with the staggering 60% struggling to meaningfully separate their work and personal life.
60% couldn't switch off.
Yeah. The blurring lines between professional and personal domains, especially when your home is your office, it exacerbates feelings of depression and leads directly towards chronic burnout. It's just much harder to mentally clock off when your laptop is sitting right there on the kitchen table, maybe steps away from your bed.
So that flexibility we initially lauded can become a real double-edged sword, making it incredibly difficult to truly switch off, to mentally and emotionally step away from work.
Exactly. Furthermore, 72% of remote workers reported increased stress. 72%. And this was strongly correlated with presenteeism.
Presenteeism, working while sick.
Yes. Or while experiencing significant personal issues. This is a significant finding. 70% of participants reported working while ill or dealing with personal stuff. Presenteeism, working when unwell, it's this self-perpetuating cycle. It doesn't just perpetuate stress and anxiety, it also diminishes the quality of the work produced.
Right.
And finally, a substantial 58% of participants reported feelings of burnout. And this was surprisingly associated with a lack of adequate technical support, reported by 50% of participants.
Lack of tech support causing burnout. How so?
Well, it highlights how frustrating, debilitating, and ultimately draining it can be when the tools you rely on every single day aren't functioning optimally, or support isn't readily available when you need it most. It just adds another layer of silent, grinding stress to the remote worker's day.
So what does this all mean for the overall picture? It sounds like remote workers, despite the perceived benefits like flexibility, are facing a unique and often unacknowledged set of challenges that can profoundly impact their well-being.
In essence, yes. The study clearly demonstrates that teleworkers tend to experience significantly more mental and physical health symptoms of stress than their office-based counterparts on average. While telework undoubtedly offers flexibility and convenience, the research unequivocally underscores the urgent need for organizations to implement targeted strategies. They need to actively mitigate social isolation, proactively promote healthy work-life boundaries, and ensure robust, responsive technical support to foster a truly healthy, productive, and sustainable remote work environment. It's simply not enough to allow remote work. You have to actively design for its unique challenges.
That's a lot to digest, isn't it? It's clear that the modern workplace, with all its technological advancements and newfound flexibilities, is also kind of a breeding ground for stress, disengagement, and some serious health concerns. So given that somewhat grim picture, where do you see the fundamental drivers? What are the very roots of this widespread malaise?
Well, one of the primary and most insidious drivers, as we touched upon earlier, is this pervasive hustle culture trap. Our culture, particularly in the West, it often glorifies the grind, right?
Yeah.
It elevates total optimization of time as an inherent, unquestionable good. This creates an environment where people feel immense, often unspoken, pressure to always be on, always productive, always achieving. It's like a relentless race without a visible finish line, fueled by this deeply ingrained belief that our worth is somehow directly tied to our output.
And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly that pre-pandemic productivity pressure felt completely out of sync with reality. I vividly remember those early lockdown memes telling everyone to, write the next King Lear in quarantine.
Oh, yeah.
And the massive backlash that followed, it felt so tone-deaf, almost cruel at the time.
That's a perfect, poignant example. Babel highlights how the overwhelming pressure of global events, particularly since 2020, made those pre-pandemic productivity standards feel utterly grotesque, really out of place. This societal trauma sparked a kind of subtle form of resistance, a quiet but powerful pushback to reclaim the ability to simply exist, to get through the day without guilt, or maybe to enjoy pleasure purely for pleasure's sake without needing to monetize or optimize it.
Right.
The King Lear memes, while perhaps well-intentioned in a misguided way, completely missed the profound point that people were grappling with unprecedented global trauma, anxiety about health, finances, the future, not simply extra free time for side hustles or grand creative endeavors. It really exposed the absurdity of constant productivity demands in the face of real human vulnerability.
It's like we finally realized that relentless hustle isn't necessarily efficiency or even true achievement. As Amy Blankson reflected in Forbes, it can often be a desperate way to mask deeper insecurities and fears of inadequacy. It traps individuals in this unsustainable cycle of performance. We're hustling to prove something, rather than maybe to achieve truly meaningful outcomes, or just to live a fulfilled life.
That underlying insecurity is an incredibly powerful and often unconscious motivator. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it helps explain why, even when people want to slow down, even when they intellectually know they should prioritize well-being, it can feel incredibly difficult to actually do so. The conditioning is just so deep-seated, reinforced by societal norms and often by corporate cultures, that implicitly reward visible effort over sustainable output. It's a systemic issue that individual willpower often struggles to overcome without conscious effort and, frankly, support.
Okay, so beyond this pervasive hustle culture, what specific measurable workplace stressors are really getting to us, according to the data in that Champion Health report?
Well, the report reveals that workload continues to be the undisputed leading cause of workplace stress. It was cited by a significant 65% of people.
65%. Still number one.
Still number one.
Yeah.
While it's slightly down from last year, it remains the dominant factor. Oliver Henry from EasyJet made a good point that sometimes it's not just the sheer amount of work that causes stress, but our relationship with it. And crucially, the inability to effectively prioritize. People often perceive everything as high importance and urgency, creating this constant state of overwhelm where they feel like they're perpetually drowning, unable to distinguish between what's truly critical and what can actually wait.
That's so true. It's about perception and our internal filters as much as it is about the actual tasks themselves. What else is contributing to this feeling of being constantly on edge at work?
Another significant factor, and one that is alarmingly rising, is a lack of control and lack of support. People feel disempowered, isolated in their roles, unable to influence decisions that directly impact their work or their well-being. If employees feel unable to make decisions or perceive leadership as not empowering them, or maybe not being fair, or simply absent in providing necessary resources, it can contribute significantly to chronic stress.
Yeah.
And as we discussed earlier, it can even manifest as physical health issues, like persistent back pain perhaps. This loss of autonomy is incredibly draining.
That feeling of just being a cog in a machine without real agency or genuine support, yeah, that can be incredibly draining. It leads to apathy and eventually, maybe, that quiet quitting we talked about.
And what about the people we work with every day? Are our peers, ironically, adding to the pressure sometimes? Unfortunately, yes, and this is a growing concern that often flies under the radar. The report brings attention to a less obvious but increasingly prevalent stressor. 1 in 4 people are now citing their peers as a cause of stress at work.
1 in 4.
1 in 4. That's a notable jump from 1 in 5 last year. This really underscores the vital importance of fostering a positive, evolving team culture. A toxic peer environment characterized by maybe micromanagement from peers, lack of collaboration, or even just passive aggression can completely transform a company from within. And it is, quite simply, the quickest way to lose truly valuable talent, regardless of how good the actual core job is.
That's a tough pill to swallow, realizing your closest colleagues could become a significant source of stress. Now, beyond the office walls or the virtual office, what's the single biggest external stressor for people that's bleeding into their work lives?
Outside of work, the Champion Health Report unequivocally states that financial pressure is the single biggest stress factor. It was cited by 41% of people.
41%.
Yeah, and that's a concerning increase from 37% last year. This has a direct and measurable impact on job performance, with 27% reporting that money worries directly affect their ability to do their job effectively.
Almost a third feel it impacts their work.
Exactly. And what's particularly concerning is that people with clinically relevant symptoms of anxiety and depression are over 2 times more likely to experience financial stress. The relationship between financial and mental well-being is just so complex, intertwined, and often reinforcing. Stress in one area just exacerbates the other. It's a vicious cycle that impacts millions.
That's a truly vicious cycle, trapping people in this spiral of worry that impacts every aspect of their lives. And there's another often overlooked stressor that I think many listeners, especially parents, can probably deeply relate to.
You're referring to parenting and its profound impact on well-being. Yes, the report sheds light on this. It's cited by a staggering 1 in 2 parents as a significant cause of stress.
Half of all parents.
Half. And those with children aged 1 to 5 years old struggle the most. A distressing 74% cite parenting stress. This vividly illustrates the significant external pressures impacting employee well-being and how they inevitably, often unavoidably, spill over into the workplace, affecting concentration, energy, availability. It really highlights the urgent need for empathy and structural support from employers for working parents. Organizations like Eon UK are making strides here with initiatives like the Parent Network and Equal Parent Leave, alongside flexible working arrangements. These have apparently profoundly benefited employees during family crises, demonstrating a tangible commitment to supporting this vital demographic.
Okay, so with all these internal and external pressures, mounting workload, lack of control, peers, finances, parenting, what's the tangible domino effect on our productivity and energy levels? What does the data tell us about our actual performance?
Well, the data presents a pretty concerning trend. Self-reported productivity levels have dipped significantly across the board. Nearly 70% of people rated their productivity as average or worse.
70%, average or worse.
Yes, which is a stark increase from 50% last year. And even more starkly, the number of people rating their productivity as low has actually doubled within the last year alone.
Doubled?
Doubled. This isn't just a minor dip. It represents a really widespread struggle to maintain focus and output in the current climate.
That's a massive, quantifiable drop. What are the main culprits behind this pervasive decline? What's draining our capacity to get things done?
The top 3 issues impacting productivity remain remarkably consistent, painting a clear picture of the interconnected challenges. Number 1 is tiredness at 61%.
Still tiredness. Still tiredness. Then high stress at 32%, and poor mental health at 25%. What's particularly noteworthy and concerning, though, is the significant uptick in poor mental health as a direct productivity drain. That's shown a substantial 20% increase. Laura Dallas from Champion Health highlights that common symptoms of poor mental health, like impaired concentration, chronic low motivation, increased fatigue. They directly lead to difficulties focusing, completing tasks, meeting deadlines. It creates this debilitating cycle where the very conditions that impact productivity also erode the capacity to address them.
Oh, it's not just productivity. Our energy levels are clearly suffering too, creating that constant feeling of depletion many of us experience.
Yes. The report shares insights into fluctuating energy levels, with a slight dip overall across the workforce. Our peak energy is typically reported around 10.1 RAM. You know, that sweet spot after the morning coffee kicks in, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. However, the lowest energy levels consistently hit around 3:28 p.m. That's that inevitable mid-afternoon slump that many of us probably recognize all too well, a time when our focus just wanes and motivation drops off a cliff.
That afternoon crash is undeniably real, and so many of us try to power through it with more caffeine or sugar, right? But it brings us back to something absolutely fundamental for sustained energy and performance: sleep.
Sleep is indeed fundamental. It's the bedrock of both physical and mental resilience. The data connects sleep directly to energy and performance, revealing a really troubling deficit across the workforce. Only a mere 19% of employees rate their sleep quality as good or excellent.
Only 19%.
19%, which is a significant drop from 29% last year. Over 1 in 3, a substantial minority, report poor sleep quality. The main causes are consistently cited as waking up regularly that impacts 47% of people and difficulty getting to sleep in the first place, reported by 35%.
Why are we sleeping so badly?
Well, it seems to be a direct, undeniable consequence of the pervasive stress we've talked about, the unending busyness, the constant screen time right before bed.
Guilty.
Yeah, me too sometimes. And that insidious, always-on culture we've been discussing, which just makes it incredibly hard to quiet the mind, wind down, and get the restorative quality rest our bodies and brains desperately need. It's almost like a crisis of rest.
This picture is quite sobering, isn't it? It's clear we're in a tough spot, maybe a widespread crisis of well-being. But this deep dive isn't just about identifying problems. It's fundamentally about finding solutions and charting a path forward. So let's shift gears. Let's explore some practical pathways to cultivating sustainable well-being and, by extension, sustainable productivity. First, let's focus on personal strategies for burnout prevention. What can we do as individuals staring down these immense pressures?
Okay, yeah. Drake Philippines offers some excellent actionable advice here, grounded in real-world challenges. The first, and arguably most critical step, is to establish clear boundaries between your work life and your home life. It's almost impossible to avoid burnout if your work constantly bleeds into and interferes with your personal time. A really concrete example, and one of the most common causes of workplace burnout apparently, is stopping the incessant checking of work emails before going to sleep.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. If for some unavoidable reason you absolutely cannot stop checking, then at least set and strictly abide by reasonable limits. Like maybe only checking for 5 minutes at a specific time and then putting the device away, far away. The goal isn't perfection, but consistency in creating that separation.
That can be tough, especially with smartphones blurring those lines so easily, but it's such a vital act of self-preservation. Okay, what's the next key strategy?
Next, you need to intentionally balance your tasks with quick wins. This means consciously switching gears throughout your day, accomplishing small, less complicated tasks, whether it's, cleaning your workspace, finishing a chapter of a book you're reading, or dedicating a few minutes to a personal hobby. It helps restore your sense of confidence and achievement.
Oh, okay.
These small successes, even if entirely unrelated to your primary work, they act as these little miniature psychological boosts. They rebuild your belief in your own efficacy and help prevent the cumulative effect of burnout. It's about creating a sense of forward momentum outside of just the high-pressure work stuff.
I love that idea. It's like mini recharge stations for your brain, little moments of tangible accomplishment that remind you of your capabilities beyond the demanding work tasks. And speaking of recharge, actual breaks are crucial, right? Not just powering through the whole day.
Absolutely. The importance of taking breaks cannot be overstated, and yet it's often the first thing to be sacrificed when we get busy. Interrupting your workday with short, restorative breaks is critical for mental refreshment and stress reduction. Even just 5 or 10 minutes can make a significant difference. Simple acts like stepping away from your desk to actually go out for lunch instead of eating while staring at your screen.
We all do that sometimes.
We do. Or taking a short walk around the block. These can profoundly refresh your mental energies, calm your nervous system, and reduce the accumulated stress. It allows your brain to shift modes, preventing that decision fatigue.
What about life outside of work? How does that factor into preventing burnout? Is just working less the only answer?
No, it's vital to cultivate new interests outside of work too. Becoming too job-focused, to the exclusion of everything else, your hobbies, your passions, your social life, that's a sure path to burnout. You need activities and interests that help you genuinely disconnect from work-related stresses and provide a different kind of mental and emotional engagement. This could be anything. Learning a new language, taking up pottery, joining a sports team, or even just diving deep into a beloved book series. These outside pursuits offer a crucial psychological escape valve and remind you that your identity and worth are not solely tied to your professional output.
That sounds like a really good way to create some crucial mental distance and prevent your entire life from becoming just about work. Okay, and when stress starts creeping in, when you feel those early warning signs, what's the proactive advice then?
Proactive stress management is absolutely key. Drake Philippines suggests creating a tangible list. Actually write it down as specific aspects of your job or workday that cause you the most stress. Once you have that list, discussing these stressors with your manager or maybe HR can open doors to finding practical ways to improve your mental well-being. Maybe it's delegating tasks, adjusting expectations, finding better resources. Beyond workplace discussions, practicing mindfulness meditation or other relaxation techniques can measurably lower stress levels. But most importantly, do not ignore the signs of stress. Acknowledgement is the critical first step towards managing them effectively before they escalate into full-blown burnout.
And connecting with others in the workplace, fostering those peer relationships we mentioned earlier, that can also be a vital buffer, right? A source of support rather than another stressor, hopefully.
Yes, building relationships and team culture is incredibly beneficial. It's often an underestimated resource. Strong, positive relationships with colleagues naturally lead to better teamwork, increased engagement, greater happiness, higher productivity, and improved job satisfaction. Crucially, colleagues can also be an invaluable source of empathy, understanding, and practical support when you're feeling burned out. They can provide a safe space to share challenges and maybe find solutions together. It transforms work from potentially an isolating experience into more of a shared journey.
Finally, a classic but always relevant piece of advice that many of us intellectually know but maybe struggle to implement consistently.
Yes, exercise frequently. It's a natural, incredibly powerful stress reliever that doesn't just physically recharge your batteries, but fundamentally boosts your productivity and mental clarity. Whether it's a brisk run, a gentle stroll in the park, a yoga session, or a strength training workout, staying active can significantly mitigate feelings of burnout. It helps manage stress by calming your nervous system, releasing endorphins, improving sleep quality, all of which contribute to greater resilience.
Right, the physical benefits are clear.
And for those caught in that productivity trap, the insight isn't just do it, it's recognizing it as a non-negotiable biohack that directly optimizes your brain chemistry for focus and resilience, often far more effectively than another cup of coffee. The deep dive here is understanding how to integrate it when time feels impossible, perhaps by, microdosing movement throughout the day, little bursts here and there.
Now, this next concept is where it really challenges the core of our hustle mindset. It's the art of doing nothing. That sounds almost radical, maybe even rebellious in our productivity-obsessed world. But what does it truly mean?
It does sound radical, doesn't it? And that's precisely why it's so powerful. As Forbes highlights, we need a fundamental reframe here. Rest is not a luxury or something you earn after you've already burned out. It is a strategic, critical investment in your sustainable success. Genuine rest leads to greater clarity, boosts creativity, and significantly enhances performance in the long run. And importantly, leaders need to actively model this behavior, demonstrating that it's okay, even beneficial, to step away sometimes.
So it's not about being lazy, it's about being strategically smart with our energy and focus. And other cultures have embraced this idea for a long, long time, offering us different perspectives on how to truly rest.
They have, yeah, and it's fascinating to explore. Babel introduces us to a few illuminating concepts from around the world. First, there's the French term flâner. It comes from the verb flâner, meaning to stroll or to saunter. A flâner is someone who walks the city not with a specific purpose or destination in mind, but simply to experience it, to observe, to be attuned to its history, its pulse. Maybe, as the article puts it, in a covert search of aesthetic or even erotic adventure.
Okay.
It represents this privileged form of leisure and observation, a leisurely engagement with modernity itself, where the act of wandering without a goal becomes a form of mindful engagement with the world around you.
So it's a purposeful aimlessness almost, a kind of mindful wandering through life, soaking in the sensory details without the pressure of an agenda.
Interesting. What about in Chinese culture? There's a term that speaks to boredom as a potential creative force.
Precisely. In Chinese, there's wuliao. It literally translates to something like bored to the point of silliness.
Wuliao. While historically it was often used pejoratively, like you're just messing around, it's increasingly being reclaimed and reinterpreted as boredom as an art form. Connie Wang's perspective, for instance, beautifully celebrates how wuliao can spark what she calls spectacularly chaotic, meaningless bullshit.
Okay.
Her words. Like constructing absurd Rube Goldberg machines for no practical purpose, or painting your legs with eyeshadow just for the sheer, unadulterated fun of it. It emphasizes the profound value of frittering time away just for the sake of it, purely for pleasure, rather than for optimization or monetization or achieving some visible outcome. Kind of liberates creativity by removing all the pressure.
I absolutely love that phrase. Spectacularly chaotic, meaningless bullshit. It perfectly encapsulates the liberation of letting your mind go wild without the pressure of an outcome, without needing to be productive.
And then there's the Dutch concept, Nixon. This one seems to be the most direct in its call to truly do nothing. Nixon is indeed the Dutch art of literally doing nothing. And by nothing, they often mean nothing. No phone scrolling, no Netflix binging, no active task, just sitting, maybe looking at a window, or simply existing. It can also involve activities that allow your mind to wander without a specific purpose, like coloring without a plan, or cooking a meal purely for the joy of the process, letting your thoughts just drift. The paradox here is crucial, though. While Nixon ultimately helps productivity and well-being in the long run by providing deep rest, it must be done just because it feels good, purely for the intrinsic pleasure of non-doing, not as a means to an end for efficiency.
Ah, right.
If you're doing Nixon to be more productive later, you're kind of missing the point of Nixon entirely. It's about being fully present in the moment of non-doing and truly letting go.
So, truly disconnecting to profoundly reconnect with yourself and your inner landscape. It sounds incredibly beneficial and also deeply challenging for many of us who are so wired to constant doing. This ties in perfectly with the idea of intentional breaks and maximizing recharge, which Kuma Space talks about. It's not just if you take breaks, but how you take them, and understanding the science behind why they work.
Exactly. Kuma Space emphasizes a fundamental truth. Breaks are not distractions or signs of weakness. They are crucial for preventing decision fatigue, significantly reducing stress, and maintaining high-level cognitive performance throughout the day. The science unequivocally shows that strategic breaks allow the brain to transition from focused, narrow thinking, like when you're really concentrating, to diffuse, broader thinking. This shift is critical, as it actually enhances learning, problem-solving, and creative insight. When you're stuck on a complex problem, stepping away and letting your mind wander can literally help your brain connect disparate ideas in new and unexpected ways.
So, it's not about working harder, but working smarter by allowing your brain the space it needs to optimize itself. How often should we be taking these breaks, and for how long for the optimal impact?
Well, for optimal effectiveness and true mental rejuvenation, breaks are generally recommended roughly every couple of hours, say every 90 to 120 minutes. And ideally, they should last between 15 to 30 minutes. Different productivity techniques offer varied timings that you can experiment with to find what suits you best. Desk time, for instance, suggests a focused 17-minute break after every 52 minutes of intense work.
Okay, specific.
Yeah. While the widely popular Pomodoro technique advocates for short 5-minute breaks after every 25 minutes of work, plus a longer 30-minute break after 4 such cycles, or Pomodoros. The key insight here is really to experiment to find your individual rhythm. This might mean short, frequent breaks every 30 minutes for some people, or longer, less frequent breaks every 90 minutes or so for others. The goal is active, mindful recuperation, not just stopping work.
And what should we actually do during these valuable breaks to ensure we truly recharge, rather than just shifting our attention to another screen like scrolling social media? What activities are genuinely restorative?
Good question. The focus should be on activities that genuinely rejuvenate you and allow for mental disengagement from work. Meditation, or simply spending time in nature, even if it's just looking out a window at some trees, can significantly decrease stress levels and foster a sense of calm. Moderate physical activities like a quick walk around the office or the block, maybe climbing some stairs, or just a few minutes of stretching can invigorate both body and mind. It boosts cognitive performance and creativity by improving blood flow and oxygen to the brain. And crucially, don't underestimate the power of a nutritious snack during your morning or afternoon break. Not just to stave off hunger, but to combat those energy slumps and maintain stable concentration throughout the day. It's about truly stepping away and actively engaging in something restorative for both your body and your mind.
That's a comprehensive, scientifically backed approach to breaks. Very useful. Now, let's talk about cultivating sustainable habits. We all know we should build better habits, whether it's exercising more, meditating, improving our diet, but actually sticking to them is often another story entirely, isn't it? The coach space provides some powerful insights into making habits truly last, not just for a week or two, but for the long haul.
Yeah, this raises an incredibly important question that so many of us grapple with. Why do some habits stick effortlessly, while others fall by the wayside despite our best intentions. The coach space explains that habits only truly stick and become ingrained when they stem from a core desire, an internal or intrinsic goal, rather than just some external pressure or should. For example, if you decide to exercise more, you're immeasurably more likely to stick with it if your deep personal wish is to be healthier and have the energy to actively play with your kids, to genuinely engage in life, rather than just for an external goal like wanting to look a certain way for a social event.
Right, the motivation comes from within.
Exactly. If the underlying reason for a new habit feels predominantly external, it's worth taking a moment to consider if you need to shift your perspective. Can you find a deeper, more personal, more intrinsically motivating connection to it?
So it's about finding your deeply personal why, your core reason, and making that the fuel for your consistency. What's the next step after unearthing that intrinsic motivation?
The next crucial step is to choose the right habit that genuinely feels good to you. This sounds simple, but it's so often overlooked. Continuing our exercise example,
Yeah.
if you want to feel fit and healthy, but you absolutely despise crowded gyms or intensely dislike cardio workouts, then don't force yourself into daily HI sessions just because it's trendy.
Yeah, that won't last.
Probably not. Instead, choose something you genuinely enjoy or at least feel curious about, maybe look forward to, like yoga, mindful walks in nature, dancing, or perhaps just focusing on healthy eating patterns that actually delight your palate. The mantra here is find what works for you.
Yeah.
Avoid the trap of imitating others' habits if their approach doesn't resonate with your preferences or personality, because if you dread it, you simply won't stick with it long term.
That makes so much sense. If you hate it, it will always feel like a chore, never a natural part of your life. And then there's the idea of going with the flow rather than sticking to rigid adherence no matter what.
Yes. The final, maybe liberating step is to truly understand that you are in charge of your routine, not the other way around. If rigid, fixed schedules don't work for your lifestyle, your energy levels, or your personality, then don't force them. Allow yourself the flexibility to incorporate habits like journaling, meditation, or that short walk when they feel natural, enjoyable, and genuinely fit into your day, rather than resenting fixed times that feel like just another obligation on your to-do list. It's about adapting and changing things until you find your own authentic rhythm. So the habit seamlessly becomes a natural, welcome part of your daily life, rather than a burdensome task to check off.
The Coach Space also provides an incredibly actionable exercise for our listeners to start building these sustainable habits right away. This feels like one of those aha moments we talked about, a concrete framework for real, lasting change.
It's a powerful personal exercise, yeah. It's designed to deeply connect habits to your most profound desires, making them far more resilient than just relying on willpower alone. Should we walk through it?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. First, begin by identifying the emotion you want to feel more in your life. What is that core emotion you feel you're lacking most right now? Maybe it's calm, joy, energy, fulfillment, creativity. Pinpoint it.
Okay, scout the emotion.
Second, drill down into why you want to feel that way. Keep asking yourself why, repeatedly about that desired emotion, until you genuinely can't go any deeper. This process uncovers your real intrinsic motivation, the deep-seated reason that will sustain you. For example, I want to feel more joy. Why? Because I feel overwhelmed. Why? Because I'm constantly reacting. Why? Because I don't feel I have enough control. You get the idea. Keep going.
Okay, I got the deep why.
Third, list what you currently do that makes you feel the opposite of that desired emotion.
Yeah.
Be brutally honest here, but without judgment. Just list the actions or habits.
Right, the things that undermine that feeling.
Exactly. Fourth, brainstorm ways to either stop doing those negative actions or maybe do them differently. Just brain dump everything that comes to mind, no matter how irrational, small, or undoable it might seem at first glance. Get it all out.
Okay, brainstormed.
Fifth, write down all the habits you believe will help you achieve the desired emotion. Think broadly again. Don't self-censor. What actions might lead you towards feeling calm or joyful or energized?
Got a list of potential good habits.
Sixth, filter this comprehensive list down to just 3 habits. This is key. To do this effectively, ask yourself 3 crucial questions for each potential habit on your list. 1, is it truly for you, or is it because you feel some external pressure or obligation? 2, is it genuinely necessary to achieve your desired emotion? And 3, does it excite you, at least a little bit, or fill you with even a spark of curiosity? If it doesn't excite you at all, it's probably not the right one for you right now.
Okay, filter down to 3 potential winners.
7th, and this is critical, choose one of those 3 to start with, just one. This prevents overwhelm and sets you up for success.
Only one.
Got it. And finally, Eighth, focus solely on that one habit for one full month until it becomes truly natural and ingrained in your routine. Feels easy. Once it's genuinely part of your identity, then and only then, add the next habit from your list of 3 and finally the third. This incremental, focused approach prevents overwhelm, builds momentum, and dramatically increases the likelihood of lasting, sustainable change. It's about intentional, deliberate integration, not a massive overhaul overnight.
That sounds like a brilliant framework for actual lasting change. It makes habits feel like an act of self-discovery and alignment rather than just pure discipline or willpower. It brings up a question, though. In your experience, what's the most common pitfall people face when trying to implement maybe the very first step of that exercise, choosing and starting that initial habit?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the biggest pitfall is often trying to take on too much too soon, picking something too big or too ambitious right out of the gate, or picking a habit that deep down isn't truly aligned with that intrinsic why they uncovered. We're kind of conditioned to believe that bigger, faster changes are better, right? But with habit formation, small, consistent, and personally resonant steps are infinitely more powerful. People often choose what they think they should do based on external expectations rather than what truly excites them or feels good, even a little. And that's usually where the friction starts and the habit eventually drops off.
That makes perfect sense. Start small, make it yours. Okay. And speaking of focus and intentionality, the last personal strategy we want to discuss is embracing deep work, a concept popularized by the author Cal Newport. It feels almost counterintuitive in our distracted, notification-saturated world, but it seems more important than ever for meaningful productivity.
It truly is. Cal Newport defines deep work as tasks performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit. The goal here isn't just to be busy, but to produce better results and higher quality work in significantly less time. This stands in stark contrast to what he calls shallow work.
Shallow work.
Yeah, shallow work includes tasks that are less mentally demanding, often administrative or logistical stuff, and crucially, are frequently done while distracted. They offer little in terms of new value creation or pushing your skills. Think answering routine emails, scheduling meetings, maybe scrolling social media feeds during work time.
Okay, so it's about intense, focused concentration rather than just ticking boxes or multitasking poorly, which we know doesn't really work. But that feels incredibly difficult in our digital age, with constant pings, emails, notifications, all vying for attention. It's almost as if the modern world is designed against deep work.
You're absolutely right. Focused concentration is increasingly difficult. It's become a truly scarce commodity. And that's due to the constant pervasive influx of emails, instant messages, social media notifications, the relentless stream of digital chatter. These platforms are, let's be honest, deliberately designed to fragment our attention. They create a compulsive urge to check, respond, and engage constantly. This constant context switching fragments our attention into tiny pieces, leading us into this perpetual cycle of shallow work where true, sustained cognitive effort becomes a rarity. Our brains are simply not designed for this level of fragmented input all day long.
So how do we resist that gravitational, almost addictive pull towards constant distraction and reclaim our focus? What are Cal Newport's 4 crucial rules for cultivating depth work?
He lays out 4 crucial rules to essentially help reprogram your brain for deep focus. The first is to work deeply. This means establishing clear rituals and routines that actively promote deep, uninterrupted work periods. This isn't just about setting aside time, it's about creating a personal routine that signals to your brain, okay, it's time to focus now. This could be a specific time block each day, a dedicated workspace free of distractions, maybe turning off notifications, or a particular pre-work routine that prepares your mind for intense concentration.
It's about setting yourself up for success, deliberately creating the conditions for focus, rather than just hoping it magically appears between meetings.
Exactly. The second rule is to embrace boredom.
Mm-hmm.
Actively train your brain to tolerate boredom and resist the immediate urge for constant distraction. This means consciously choosing not to immediately reach for your phone the moment you have a spare second, or hit a mental roadblock, or find yourself waiting in line. Yeah, it's hard. It's about building your capacity for sustained focus by allowing your mind to wander sometimes, to process, and to just be okay with not being constantly stimulated. This is actually a profound countercultural act in our hyper-connected world.
That's a hard one for many of us, myself included. We're so conditioned to fill every tiny void with a quick scroll or a notification check.
And the third rule directly addresses that pervasive habit.
Yeah.
Quit social media. or at the very least, drastically minimize the use of platforms that are specifically designed to fragment your attention and cultivate those addictive checking behaviors. These platforms fundamentally undermine your ability to sustain deep concentration by constantly pulling you away from the task at hand. It's a recognition that their business model essentially thrives on your fragmented attention.
So not necessarily a full digital detox for everyone, maybe, but a conscious, intentional decision to limit their intrusive nature and reclaim your most valuable resource, your attention.
Precisely. And the fourth and final rule is to drain the shallows. Be incredibly intentional and strategic about how you spend your time, actively protecting and preserving your capacity for deep, focused work. This means identifying and ruthlessly eliminating unnecessary shallow tasks, or consolidating them to specific non-prime time blocks like maybe late afternoon, leaving your most cognitively prime hours free for that demanding deep work. It's about being a fierce gatekeeper for your attention, recognizing that every shallow task you allow to creep in reduces your capacity for the deep, meaningful work that actually moves the needle.
Those principles are a powerful antidote to the always-on culture and a blueprint for truly valuable work. Okay, we've talked a lot about what individuals can do to cultivate well-being and productivity, but it's equally, if not maybe more, important to consider the crucial role of organizations. What are the key management strategies that companies can and really should implement to prevent disengagement and burnout across their workforce?
Right, because it can't all be on the individual. Monetask highlights several crucial strategies that move beyond personal responsibility to systemic change within the organization. First, managers must actively encourage open dialogue. This means creating an environment where employees genuinely feel comfortable and safe expressing concerns, frustrations, or even early signs of burnout without fear of reprisal or judgment. Implementing regular one-on-one meetings and maybe more informal check-ins is vital for identifying issues early, fostering trust, and building mutual understanding before problems escalate into crises. It's really about active listening, not just ticking a box for a meeting.
So a proactive, empathetic approach, rather than just waiting for problems to fester and become full-blown crises. What else is essential for effective management in this context?
It's absolutely essential to offer consistent and meaningful recognition. Managers need to acknowledge and sincerely appreciate employees' contributions. This could be through formal rewards, bonus structures, sure, but also simply through public praise in team meetings or specific timely feedback on a job well done. Recognition is such a powerful yet often underutilized motivator. It directly combats that feeling of being undervalued, which is a huge driver of disengagement. It reinforces positive behaviors and can significantly reduce the insidious creep of quiet quitting by making employees feel seen and genuinely appreciated for their efforts.
Simple gestures can go an incredibly long way, often more than just a pay raise sometimes, in terms of daily morale and feeling valued. And then back to that critical work-life balance we discussed earlier, how can organizations actually facilitate that rather than just paying lip service to the idea?
Yeah. Promote genuine work-life balance. Employers must not only preach it, but actively respect employees' personal time. This translates into tangible actions, like ensuring manageable workloads and setting realistic expectations, not just for individuals, but across entire teams. It often requires a cultural shift. It also means actively offering flexible schedules or remote work options where possible, but critically, also supporting employees in utilizing these effectively, helping them regain control over their personal lives, which significantly reduces the likelihood of disengagement and burnout. It's about empowering choice and respecting boundaries, not just having the policies on paper.
And beyond their current roles, people generally need to see a future within the organization, right? A path for personal and professional growth. Without that, stagnation can set in pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Provide clear growth opportunities. Employees need to see clear paths for advancement and professional development within the company. Offering continuous learning opportunities, mentorship programs, clear career progression frameworks. All of this keeps employees engaged, motivated, and feeling invested in their future with the organization. It directly counters that sense of stagnation that often leads to quiet quitting and overall dissatisfaction. It basically tells employees, we value your future here and we want to invest in you.
And specifically for the remote work environments we dissected earlier, that academic study underscored that there are some unique strategies organizations need to adopt to address that specific psychological toll.
Indeed. To directly address the unique psychological toll of telework, organizations really need to actively foster virtual social connections. This means going beyond just the basic team meetings. Maybe implementing regular, structured, but also informal team-building activities, things like virtual coffee breaks, online game nights, maybe themed social hours to mitigate that social isolation and build genuine camaraderie among remote colleagues. They also need to explicitly establish clear work-life boundaries and flexible work arrangements that tangibly help remote workers separate their professional and personal lives. Perhaps through things like no meeting blocks in the calendar or clear communication protocols around expected response times outside of core hours.
I can see how vital those would be, especially when your home is your office and those lines get so easily blurred day after day. What else for remote teams to ensure sustainability and well-being?
Organizations must also provide comprehensive technical support and training. Remember, that study showed inadequate tech support contributes significantly to frustration and burnout for remote workers. So, robust IT systems, clear troubleshooting guides, and readily available, responsive technical assistance are absolutely essential to minimize friction and enable smooth workflows. Don't leave people hanging when their tech fails. And finally, managers should proactively monitor mental health among teleworkers. This means regular, empathetic check-ins, asking how people are really doing, and providing easy, confidential access to mental health resources. The goal is to proactively identify and address issues before they escalate into serious problems. These combined strategies are crucial for promoting a healthy, productive, and sustainable remote work environment.
That's a strong list of actionable steps for managers. But beyond individual management practices, it truly comes down to the entire organizational culture, doesn't it? Building a truly supportive workplace culture from the ground up.
It absolutely does. The Champion Health Report unequivocally reinforces that a positive, supportive culture isn't just a nice-to-have or some soft HR initiative. It is intrinsically and directly linked to employee mental well-being and, consequently, to productivity. When employees feel genuinely supported, understood, and valued, they are healthier, happier, more engaged, and significantly more productive. Conversely, a bad, toxic, or unsupportive culture is, quite simply, the quickest and most effective way to bleed talent, leading to high turnover, reputational damage, and diminished performance. It's a clear business case for prioritizing well-being, not just a moral one.
So prioritizing well-being isn't just altruistic, it's actually smart, strategic business. How can companies integrate this philosophy into their core operational thinking?
Well, organizations should explicitly prioritize well-being as a metric of success, alongside financial targets or other KPIs. This means actively integrating wellness goals into performance reviews, team planning sessions, and overall strategic objectives. It demonstrates to everyone from the top down that mental and physical health are considered foundational to long-term achievement and sustainable performance, not just an afterthought or a separate program siloed in HR. This shift in mindset, starting at the leadership level, is absolutely critical.
This also extends to supporting specific health issues that have historically been underserved or maybe simply ignored in the workplace, like female health issues.
Absolutely. The report discusses the critical need for organizations to understand and proactively support female health in its entirety, moving beyond just generic wellness programs. This includes providing comprehensive education and awareness around things like menstrual cycles, fertility challenges, and particularly menopause, which can have profound impacts on professional women later in their careers. We can learn from progressive examples like the England Lionesses football team. They integrated cycle mapping into their training regimes for performance enhancement.
Really?
Yeah. It shows how understanding female physiology can actually be leveraged for better performance and support rather than being seen as some kind of hindrance or taboo topic. It's about fostering open discussions, maybe having focus groups, to truly understand women's lived experiences in the workplace, leading to tailored and effective policies and support systems.
That's a really progressive, proactive approach, moving beyond just acknowledgement to actual integration and support for diverse biological needs. What about neurodiversity, which is thankfully gaining much needed recognition in the workplace now?
For neurodiversity, employers have both a legal and, I'd argue, a moral obligation to make reasonable adjustments for neurodivergent individuals. And it's important to recognize that a formal medical diagnosis isn't always required to implement effective support. Sometimes it's about observation and conversation. It's crucial to educate the wider team about neurodivergent traits, things like sensory sensitivities, different communication preferences, or unique processing styles, and how to adapt management styles and communication accordingly. Critically, avoid placing the burden solely on neurodivergent employees themselves to educate everyone around them. That's exhausting. Maintaining open, empathetic dialogue about individual needs is essential, as each neurodivergent condition and individual experience is different and requires tailored support. It's about creating an inclusive environment where unique strengths can truly flourish.
And finally, how do we systematically combat this insidious always-on culture we've been talking about throughout this discussion, especially given the rise of remote and hybrid work models? How do we actually dismantle that expectation of constant availability?
It requires practical, consistent effort and a real top-down commitment. Leaders must actively set and model boundaries themselves. That means logging off at a reasonable hour, not sending emails late at night or on weekends expecting immediate replies. It means effectively normalizing proper lunch breaks away from the desk and encouraging movement and fresh air breaks during the day. For hybrid and remote workers especially, transparency around workloads, actively addressing potential overwork before it becomes a problem, and having clear mechanisms for addressing conflict are key. The report interestingly notes that men, for instance, are more likely to work, on average, an extra 2 hours a week. This might be due to financial pressure or lingering societal expectations of being the primary provider, perhaps. Organizations need to actively demystify this notion that longer hours inherently equate to greater success or commitment for the health and well-being of all employees. It's about creating an environment where employees feel understood, stress can be openly discussed without stigma, and well-being is not just encouraged, but actively facilitated and protected by the system itself.
These are not just wishful thinking either. There are companies out there truly leading by example, demonstrating that a focus on well-being can coexist with and actually even enhance productivity. Kuma Space, for instance, you mentioned, actively encourages a healthy break culture.
Yes, Kuma Space champions creating workspaces that are genuinely conducive to productive breaks, not just allowing them, but actively promoting them. This means things like investing in ergonomic furniture, designing spaces with maybe soothing colors, integrating plants and natural elements in work environments. But more importantly, they foster a profound shift in mindset. That rest is a necessity, a vital component of sustainable performance, not a luxury or a sign of weakness. This transforms their company culture from the ground up, making well-being an integral part of their operational philosophy, not just a poster on the wall.
And leadership is so crucial in modeling that behavior, isn't it? Because if the boss isn't taking breaks or seems to be working all hours, no one else will feel comfortable doing so, regardless of the official policy.
Absolutely. The power of leadership and action cannot be overstated. Managers and senior leaders must personally adhere to scheduled breaks. They need to genuinely encourage their teams to take regular, uninterrupted breaks, maybe aiming for that every 90 to 120 minutes guideline. And crucially, they must respect those break times by actively avoiding scheduling meetings or sending urgent requests during them. Let people have their break. They should also openly share how these breaks have personally enhanced their own productivity and creativity, making it clear that taking time to rest actively leads to better ideas, reduced stress, and a healthier work-life balance overall. Recognition programs can further cement this value, maybe celebrating employees or teams who exemplify a balanced approach to work and life, reinforcing that cultural shift.
That's powerful when it comes from the top, demonstrating genuine commitment. And Eon UK offers a truly inspiring example of empathetic, family-friendly policies in action.
Yes, Eon UK's initiatives like the Parent Network and their groundbreaking introduction of equal parent leave, alongside truly flexible working arrangements. These are concrete examples of organizational responsibility in action. They make a tangible difference in employees' daily lives. The anecdote shared in our sources of an employee who benefited immensely from flexible hours during a sudden, profound family crisis perfectly illustrates the profound impact of empathetic, family-friendly policies. It's not just about having a policy written down somewhere. It's about the tangible support, the understanding, and the adaptability provided to employees in their most vulnerable moments of need. That fosters a deep sense of loyalty and psychological safety, which is invaluable.
We've taken a really comprehensive deep dive today into the complex, often challenging landscape of workplace well-being. We've gone from the stark realities of burnout and increasing mental health struggles to the hidden psychological challenges of remote work and that pervasive, often unconscious influence of hustle culture that drives so many of us. But we've also armed ourselves with powerful individual strategies like establishing boundaries, embracing the counterintuitive power of doing nothing, and building sustainable habits from the inside out. And we explored transformative organizational approaches like fostering truly supportive cultures, encouraging genuine work-life balance, and supporting diverse employee needs, moving beyond mere lip service to real action.
Yeah, and our core session throughout this, I think, remains clear. Sustainable success in the modern world is not found in an endless grinding pursuit of more.
It's found in a deliberate human-centered approach that profoundly prioritizes well-being, embraces strategic rest as a non-negotiable component of performance, and fosters genuine connection and empathy within teams and organizations. It's really about fundamentally redefining what productivity truly means, moving beyond mere busyness or hours logged to truly meaningful, high-quality outcomes achieved with human flourishing, not human depletion, at its core.
This journey has certainly illuminated both the shadows and, thankfully, the clear pathways to brighter, healthier professional lives for all of us. So, considering all we've discussed today about the immense pressures of modern work, the profound need for intrinsic motivation, and the liberating power of intentional rest, I want to leave you, our listener, with a provocative thought. What single anti-productivity practice, maybe that radical idea of doing Nixon or embracing boredom like Wuliao or setting one truly firm boundary around your time, what single practice could you introduce into your life this week that would fundamentally shift your relationship with work, even just a little bit? Think about it, maybe embrace it and see what happens.